We're gonna build a computer. Put the handbrake down here. Fan is spinning, so that's a good sign. 100% utilization. Temperature is 61 degrees. Alright, what's up? So today we are going to talk about computers. Actually, we're going to build a computer. ITX build. So the purpose of this ITX build is going to be to create a low-powered PC for Xbox cloud gaming. So without further ado, let's get to it. I have an ITX motherboard by ASRock, the B550M ITX/AAC. Really basic motherboard. Here it is. So this is it. Nothing special in terms of heat sinks or anything. Dual DDR4 slots, one NVMe SSD slot, 5 USB-A ports, one USB-C slot, built-in AC, Wi-Fi, built-in sound card, DisplayPort, and HDMI output. And it has one PCIe 16 slot that we are not going to be using. And the CPU that we're going to be using is this. This is a Ryzen 3200G Ryzen APU. It has the GPU built into the chip itself. Now, oddly enough, this motherboard right there, it says it's actually not compatible with the Ryzen 3200G, which is the CPU that I'm using. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm thinking that the initial BIOS that this board shipped did not support it. In any case, I did confirm that this CPU does work on this board, so we're good to go. For RAM, we got 16 gigabytes of TeamGroup DDR4, 3200 megahertz. For our SSD, we're going to go with the Samsung 980 SSD. So CPU cooler. So this is really a budget build, trying to spend as little money as possible. The CPU I actually got on Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. The CPU cooler, Amazon, 24 bucks I think. A Thermal Right brand, right there. Low profile cooler. The fan just sits on here and forces air down. Probably not the best cooler, but it was cheap and should be, for the most part, pretty effective. I'm not doing anything crazy on this computer either. It's just cloud gaming, which is pretty much streaming. No integrated, what do you call it, IO plate or IO shield is what it is. Case. So for this one, we're building in this case right here. This is an InWin, I believe it's a BQ series chassis. Small form factor right here. Looks like it's made in Taiwan. Really cheap case, but you do have a headphone and a microphone jack here in the front, USB 3.0, power button, power light, and the hard drive for the data, what do you call it, blinker thingy. So 150 watt power supply, but it is 80 plus, what do you call it, bronze rated, so should be good. Now, this is a 3200G, not a super power hungry CPU, no discrete GPU, so shouldn't be pulling more than 100 watts out of this. I believe that's pretty much all the components, so let's go ahead and let's start the build. So first off, we're gonna start with the CPU. So here on these Ryzen CPUs, the Ryzen 5000 series and below, they have the pins on the CPU right there. So when you're installing the CPU, you're just going to look for the triangle. You'll see here, there's a triangle right there. You'll also see it here on the front. If you look on the motherboard itself, there's also a triangle. Triangle to triangle. Now this is a 0 insertion for slot ZIF. So in other words, you shouldn't have to really push down on the dang thing to get it in. If you have to push down on the CPU to get it in, something's wrong. You probably got a bent pin or something. Hopefully we don't have a bent pin here, so I'm just going to up, drop it in. You shouldn't have to press anything down if it seats correctly, as this one has. Then you just put the handbrake down here. That's pretty much it. So now the CPU is in the motherboard. See, next I'm going to go ahead and install my RAM. With the RAM in general, you have the part that goes into the slot. You'll notice there's a notch right here. And you'll notice here in the motherboard, there is a notch also right here. There's a notch right here. So basically, you just got to line up the notch. Just pop your RAM in. Depending on the motherboard, you might have one of these little switches here to hold the RAM in place. This motherboard only has it on one side. You might have it on both sides. Line it up here into the grooves and push down. Line it up into the grooves, push it in, and push it down. And then those things will pop up automatically. Next, let's go ahead and install our SSD. Depending on your motherboard, your SSD might come with an integrated, heat sink. This one does, looks nicer. Get our trusty screwdriver, which magnetic tip screwdriver. The days of messing up your computer with the magnets are long gone. I do remember back when I was little, someone, I don't know who, may have messed up the family computer by putting a compass on top of the computer, unbeknownst to them, exactly on top of where the hard drive was. So that didn't work out too well. There's already a thermal pad on this heatsink, so no need to do anything else. All you gotta do is line it up, and that's pretty much it. Put the screws back in. All right. That's the SSD installed. Before we can install the motherboard into the computer case itself, we gotta install the heatsink. So first we need some thermal paste. I am particular to the Arctic MX4 thermal paste. We're just gonna use the center dot method. So you take your paste, and you just put here in the middle, a goodly amount. Depending on who you talk to and who you ask, you're doing it wrong. Long story short, put some there. If it starts to overheat, you didn't put enough, or you have an air pocket. Once you put the cooler onto the CPU itself, don't pull it off if possible and put it back on, because it might leave some air pockets on top of the CPU, which may affect the cooling, but also may not. And then so basically in this, you literally just drop it onto the CPU. 4-corner bolts, 4-corner mounting holes. Gonna go ahead and do that. And like I said, once I have the pressure onto the CPU applied, I'm gonna make sure I don't pull it off of it. Now, with this design of a CPU cooler, there is a mounting plate that must be used, so make sure you're using the correct one, AM4. Then you just line it up with the holes. And then on this one, you have the, the nuts. I'm much more familiar with the 2 mounting point design, but in all fairness, this 4-point mounting design should be more even. So now that I got the nuts on the back started, I'm just going to use this tool that comes with the heat sink. Just pop it on here and just turn it until it is tight, but not too tight. You don't want to crack your motherboard. As for how tight, it doesn't, okay, maybe they give instructions, but I didn't read them. Use good judgment. That's probably good. I think we're good. It's not really moving, so I'm just gonna go over around all 4 of them one more time to kind of hand tighten. Okay, like basically I'm doing a little bit of pressure, and if it's moving, I'm turning. If it's not, I'm not. I think we're good. Finally, we get to put the fan on. It's a pretty chintzy fan mount. It's basically the equivalent of paper clips holding this thing together. Put the wire on the correct side, and then it just mounts here on the top. Pretty much just use these paper clips to attach it to the fan. There's one, and basically now it's in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. As you see here, it's now on. It's not super secured because it's essentially held on by paper clips. Technically, I'm able to hold it by that. I would not recommend that. I'd probably recommend another cooler, except this one's really low profile, as we see here. It's just barely taller than the RAM. And the main reason I'm using this is because of the low profile case that I'm using. So pretty much we're good to go, right? I mean, we got our RAM in, we got our SSD in, CPU in, we got our cooler in. CPU fan, which we're gonna do right there. Now the CPU fan's installed, this thing is ready to go in. Let's get the case over here. I prepped this case a little bit. I zip tied some of these wires so they'd be better organized. With this kind of a case, there's not a whole lot of room for cable management. So when you're installing a motherboard into a case, don't forget to put this I/O shield first. If you forget it, you're gonna have to take the whole thing out and do it all over again. And depending on the case and on the I/O shield, it may, like be a nice tight fit, or it might be super loose. And otherwise, you just take the case, take the motherboard, and literally drop it right in. So, if you remember from the last build, I hate freaking front panel connectors. I still don't understand why in 2023 these stupid front panel connectors are the only way we can connect front panel connectors. But it is what it is. So let me do hard drive light first. Okay, power LEDs. Funny enough, it might be actually easier for me to take out this RAM slot. This RAM. Finally, the power switch. Well, that went pretty smoothly, as you'll see here. When it comes to building computers, it's all about the order of operations. There's not really a right or wrong one. Your mileage may vary. Situation. The USB. And as you'll see here, I'm just trying to get my cable management good to go here. And of course, there's a little bit of trial and error for this. 24-pin power. Okay, let's go ahead and just drop this in. And I think we're good to actually start putting the screws in. So I am going to install this motherboard in full. Alright, let's get our other power connectors installed. We have our CPU power. Okay. Oops, I did not install the front audio connector yet. Ooh. This might not be super easy, but it wasn't bad actually. And I think we're pretty much done. I mean, here's the computer. Everything is installed. Not the best cable management ever, but at the same time, all things considered, at least it's not strewn about all over the place. It's kind of tucked in here. It's just hampered by the physical limitations of the case for the most part. Well, that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and close this thing up. On the back here, there's slots for a, SATA style SSD, but we don't need it. So go ahead and close this. Close the front. As you see here, it just barely clears it. Close this. So as we see here, it is really a small computer. So, I mean, in my head, computer. Mesh grill here on the side. But yeah, let's plug it in and let's see how it does. Ooh, I forgot to put the antennas for the Wi-Fi. So I've actually installed Windows on the SSD. So once we power this up, it should be good to go. So this power supply comes with one of these power connectors right here. So it's not your standard one for the for a computer. Okay, I have a keyboard and mouse combo that I bought specifically for this computer. This is a Logitech K400 Plus. This is a compact keyboard with a trackpad, wireless of course. Let's see if this thing will work. Fan is spinning, so that's a good sign. I was kind of worried there for a second, I ain't gonna lie. Let's go ahead and log in. And as we see here, we have the full mouse, click and drag. Let's take a look at if there's any cool videos from our YouTube channel. Ooh, looks like we did a Lego build. Oh, gotta love ads. So I have this thing connected to a power meter so we can kind of see the power consumption. Let's go ahead and get Cinebench R23 and let's see how slow this thing is, because it's not a fast CPU. But more importantly, let's see how the power consumption is when the system is under load. 4 logical cores. The Ryzen 3200G is a quad-core processor only. At idle, we're at 17 to call it about 40 to 50 watts on the high end of idle, 17 watts on the low end of idle. So let's go ahead and run Cinebench R23 standard multi-core. Let's see what happens. 100% utilization. Temperature is 61 degrees. And it looks like power consumption's right at 82. So this is going to run for 9 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look to see what's the temperature peak and what's the score. I'm not expecting this score to be super high. So this is a Ryzen 3 3200. I'm hoping to get that low end there, 3021. That's whatever's uploaded to the database. Curious to see what mine is. And I could definitely feel some heat coming out now. Looks like we're holding steady at 69 degrees as our max and current. And CPUs, yeah, it's running at 3.74 gigahertz, about 85 watts on the power consumption. So yeah, I will say I don't recall the last time I saw Cinebench run this slow. My other computer's a Ryzen 5 5900X. Runs a lot faster, so, but we'll see. It peaked at 79 degrees, so it's definitely starting to warm up. We're still holding steady at about almost 3.8 gigahertz, so I mean, it's not throttling or anything, so cool. Maybe it's just breaking in. $32.57. Not bad at all, I think. So yeah, seems like this thing's working fairly well. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Probably test this out for Xbox Cloud Gaming. Might talk about that a little bit more in the future. But yeah, for my first build of a small form factor PC, overall went pretty well already. That's pretty much it. Build successful so far, and we'll see how it goes. And with that, catch you all on the flip.